our identities. So just a little bit about our organization as a whole. We are a local nonprofit who engages everyday people to build a just and nonviolent movement through community organizing and leadership development, human rights, economic justice, and peace. So this is the first time that we're opening what would be help to everybody in the community. So we're really excited to start this series because everybody can use this organizing content that we're putting across today, even if you're hearing it for a second time and brushing up on it. So the Grow or Grassroots Organizing Workshop series will run through July with workshops on the fourth Wednesday of every month. We do recommend coming to all the workshops as they're put together in a series, but if you can only make some, that's completely fine, and it's not hard to catch up on what's happening. So we will put the link with all the information on how to sign up for the other workshops in the chat now and at the end of the session. And if you already haven't signed up, you can do so there. So in the link, it also describes the regular session webinar Wednesdays if you'd like to attend those too.
Awesome. Howmu everyone. My name is Ivy. I am Paiute of the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe and also working here at Pajals as a youth organizer. I work for the city of Spokane as well with Kate Burke's office, and I'm a junior at North Central High School. And I'll just share a little bit more about Pajals. We believe everyday people can accomplish extraordinary things together. And so we strive to draw from our differences and to increase and enhance effective action to build a just and nonviolent world, just as Sarah said. Our values ask us to honor and respect our web of different life experiences and to work collaboratively, sharing power and decision making. Our work is guided by leadership of people directly impacted by the problems we seek to address, both among our Pajals community and in our broader community and world. So we recognize our shared humanity and commit in the following ways to neither harm a member nor see a member harmed, and I will paste these in the chat. Use an intersectional racial equity lens in all of our work, call each other in, not out when we make mistakes, and use decision-making processes to engage our diverse community. So this evening, we will be going over some basics, talking about grassroots organizing strategies. And as we progress into the future, we hope to engage in these courageous conversations, maybe tonight after we get through some content, and in future months. We hope to see you there. So I guess I will paste these in and we will jump right into it. We're hoping to be done right around 8:15 tonight, and you're welcome to stick around if you have questions or if you'd like to chat. And other than that, I guess we'll go for it. So you've likely done some sort of professional development or skill building, talking about change in a business setting. And the beauty of this intergenerational platform is that you get Sarah and I, who funnily enough, have yet to reach the career stage. So we don't have that same context of training. And for those younger people joining us, you can apply these approaches and methodology into a career, which Sarah may address, or even to a short-term basis, like a project you're working on. For those of you already established in your fields, we do encourage you to use this lens of experience, but also of one that provides analysis that you can view your own work in after tonight. So I guess we'll just jump right in with Sarah.
All right, so as you can probably guess, change occurring just as a whole is a huge topic, and it's the subject of a pretty lively ongoing debate. So our aim for this evening is to kind of just share theories so we can think about change in relation to experiences that we've all had, and also the impact of campaigns which we've all worked in. So for us, the big idea that comes up over and over again can be summarized into the top-down or bottom-up power model, and this is going to become a little bit more clear as we move into power mapping. So for those of you who are career organizers, some of this content might align with your personal philosophy and your daily work. And we really do hope that we can solidify or provide some more perspective as we move forward into this evening and into power mapping.
Yeah, and just briefly, I think we'll go through the agenda super quickly. We just have 4 things we want to talk about. The change theory. Number 2, we're going to talk about the 6 approaches to change within this theory. And then we'll have a little break and jump right into power mapping, which will be some more engaging work that we hope you can share with us.
Yeah. So we're going to start with the top-down change model. So top-down approaches have arguably dominated thinking about how change happens until pretty recently. It's a school of thought that says since the formal structures of society dictate how society works, then the goal of change campaigns needs to be focused around changing those structures. So the people who hold power and the people who hold power are economically dominant or socially dominant. So often this means targeting like lawmakers and political decision makers at a local or national level, as well as attempting to influence people like CEOs, board members, stakeholders of national and multinational corporations. It really just depends on the issue that you're working on. So the worldview from which top-down change model working makes the most sense is one which sees society as like a machine that works broadly, but it also requires fixing because of the smaller problems within it. So individual problems can obviously be like analyzed and addressed, and the machine will be reprogrammed to make it work better. But widespread public awareness of the issue can be part of the work, but fundamentally, the structural change is what matters. What emerges in opposition to this approach is called the bottom up change structure. So, what does that look like? So, the bottom up change structure, in contrast, sees society as more of a organic system where all issues are interlinked and fundamentally can't be divided. So you might change one aspect of a system, but at the end of the day, the system itself is resilient and that absorbs this change without a fundamental shift. This analysis might, for example, be applied to the question of racial equity in the United States. So arguably, rights printed in law have come a long way and continue to head broadly in the right direction, but the practical reality is that in our society, that's not always reflected. Instead of seeking to change the structures at the elite level of policy, the fullest version of bottom up change seeks instead to work at the level of creating relationships between the people and the communities that are most impacted by the issues that you're working on. The cause and effect pathway to real change is less clearly articulated, but the fundamental belief is that without these communities becoming stronger and understanding themselves better within their own rights, no real change is ever going to be possible. So these are the two dominating models of power and are ultimately systemic goals of larger change agents. The point here is that our goal is to shift power to the people. A great visual that our director Liz always uses is just the triangle. So we want to shift power from this to this. So this is where the people at the top are the least impacted, but they're making decisions for the people who are most impacted, and there are more people who are impacted. So we want to kind of turn it around where it looks more like this, where the people who are impacted have more say in the decision making. So that kind of moves us into our next point. So as you probably know, in our PJALS community, we're pretty united in believing that we do need like a long-term, independent, intergenerational, multiracial mass movement to win policy change and also just shift power. So we really do strive for the people power model to shift from this to this. To be most effective, we have to win and shift power, and we can only win with a large movement. That's also just people power, right? So we have to continue to build our base and work out from there. To use our time well, we have to consider who we're talking to and act accordingly. So how do we do that? That hands over to Ivy.
Yeah, and just a little note came to my mind as we're talking about the people power model. It's so fun to do it with a bunch of 14-year-olds because whiteboard and you draw a big triangle, and then there's this realization that there are so many little triangles and everybody gets so excited. They like write all over the whiteboard and like make smaller, bigger triangles. Anyway, it's very fun. If you have time in your breakout room, I highly recommend you talk about that with your group. So how do we do that? Think like an organizer. So we're thinking about power and relationships. And this is where power mapping serves to be really useful, which is our active organizing strategy for tonight. And to build that power, we as organizers in campaigns need to be thinking about creating unity as a base for response in a powerful manner. And so we want you to fill out this chart in a small group in just a moment. I will put an image in the chat and then also share it on this screen here. I guess we'll do that now, actually. Let me pull up. Beautiful. Opening the chat. I hope you'll be able to see this. Let me know if that works. Thumbs down. Alrighty, so we'll talk for a minute and then Sarah will also work to get that into the chat, an image for you. So we're gonna have you fill out this little chart in a group. The middle column is about how you get from the first to the third. So we're talking about weak and strong organizing and what that looks like. And bridging or tactics to get to the solutions we want to see. And so when you come back, we'll try to do a little bit of whole group collaboration and also be on the lookout. We'll come through and give you a discussion question as well. Sarah, did I miss anything before we pop into breakouts?
I don't think so. Just want to confirm, it might be hard if you're on a phone, but can everybody download that picture that Ivy put in the chat?
Yes, I was able to.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, you do not see it. Do you have
I cannot find it.
Okay. I will work on getting a link for you instead then.
All right. So while we're distributing that then, how about the first thing you talk about when you get into your breakout rooms? Have you ever learned about the people power model before? And if so, does it strike any questions for you? Like when I think about it, I always start thinking about my school, like the principal at the top and the students at the bottom, versus in a classroom, it looks a little different, and in the lunchroom, it looks a little different. So maybe see if you can think about that just as we're bumping you in. Opening rooms. All right, we should have everyone. Sarah, how should we get that in there? Let's see.
I'm making a link that anybody can like view it, not change it. They can see the chat while they're in breakout rooms, right?
Yep, and we'll go through and look too. George, does it give you an option to move into a breakout room there? Okay, I'm gonna jump into them, Sarah.
Okay. Hi. Are you in a breakout room with no people?
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Sorry. I am with somebody who I'm like supporting. And so I'm trying to be in the same place as her.
Okay.
I'm lost.
Ivy, what is their name?
Stacy Sanchez.
Okay. Sorry, I'm new with the breakout rooms.
That's okay. I've never used them either.
Okay, I think I figured it out. Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. Hi, Adrian.
Hi. You guys are doing good.
Thanks. Had some trouble with the picture. We thought for Teams it like just puts the picture into the chat and not like the download, but now we know for next time, so that's good.
Yeah.
You want to reconvene at 7:27? I'll just send out the chat.
Yeah, sounds good. And then I think we can also just send like the message that says come back, like end or close all rooms. Yeah.
I'm going to send in the question too.
Okay.
Isn't going terribly. Which
Oh,
line?
that's lucky. Both of your devices got put in the same room. Probably
Yeah.
did that.
I did that.
Yeah.
You think is the most important and why? Okay, I'm going to jump through the rooms again one more time.
Okay. Oh wait, also one thing. I'm not doing all of the approaches to change, just some of them didn't make sense in the context. So I'm just going to say, oh, we're not going through all the ones on the slide today. Just 2 of them I didn't.
Which one?
One of them, manipulation and co-opation, and then explicit and implicit coercion.
Did you delete them? I can help explain.
Yeah, they're just not really, they were like bribery and just not really what we're going for, I think.
Okay. So you want to take out, well, there is this one about like walkouts and boycotts. I can take them.
I kept that.
Well, that's explicit and implicit coercion.
Are you okay here? Are you in the Google Doc? No, yeah, I kept that one. Just kidding.
Oh shit. Okay. Well, if that's what you think, that's fine. I'll just like, I feel like we're gonna be pretty early. But okay, I'm gonna jump out.
Okay.
I think it was like 7:04 when I remembered to start recording.
That's fine. We're just doing, I think by then it was like land acknowledgement and introduction. So didn't miss anything that like content wise.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds like we might be pivoting a little bit, which is totally okay. Sarah, if that's all right with you, we can just take a few more minutes to talk about the activity and explain kind of what's going on.
Okay, I just hit close.
Yeah, I saw that. It's okay. It'll be easier this way. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to take it from a whole group approach this time. Awesome. As people are jumping back in, it seems like there were some varying levels of understanding and also maybe some tech issues. So we have the time. If y'all are okay with it, we would love to go back through it as a whole group and maybe see if we can share some more knowledge that way. Wonder, for any of you, if you weren't able to, could you put your hand up if you still can't see that image, and we might be able to give it to you a third way. Okay, a few of you. So how about I share my screen?
All right.
Or maybe Sarah, are you able to pull it up and then share it that way?
Sanchez.
Yes.
Awesome.
Is it on iPads that you can't see it?
It was in the chat is where that link must be.
I couldn't find it in the chat either.
Yeah.
No worries. We're gonna
Yeah.
pull it up on the screen here.
In fact, my chat just went blank.
Uh-oh.
Here we are.
There we
Here we
go.
are.
Sarah has it up on the screen.
Finally.
Good, thank you.
Just to give a little more context, I know some of you got to hear my spiel. So the goal of this is to talk about the specific areas in which organizers serve to build their base. And so, for example, when we're talking about the second one, I think for me, what's most obvious is to break confusion, we want to educate. And so an organizer's role in that scenario is to share knowledge and make sure everybody has a clear understanding of what's going on. And that is that first role into building power. And so ultimately what we want to see at the bottom there is talking about, you could go on for days and days about what an organizer could do to build power from no power. And so just whatever's most apparent to you, if you have a notebook in front of you, jot it down. If you'd like, throw it in the chat. And even if you're able, feel free to unmute and share. And the idea in this is that everybody's going to have a different answer for each one. They may be similar, maybe crazy different approach, but the point of that is each of us have this really unique role in being an organizer. Sarah and I have different approaches. Liz has a different approach. And so what we do with this is in future sessions, hopefully we'll be able to talk a little bit more about what your approach says about your organizing model and what you can do to build power and build a base, whether that be organizing people or educating those with informative podcasts or leading a protest or a march, something of that nature. So I guess we can just do it as a whole group. Let's take 3 minutes and see if you can get an answer to each of these middle ones here, and then come back together.
Is there any chance we could scroll up a little bit so you can see like yes, perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
Are we supposed to be back in our groups?
Nope, we're gonna do it in the whole group, and then since we have the time,
Okay.
yeah, if you'd like, you're welcome to share in the big group.
Go ahead, Joe.
Is the idea that we're filling in the blank with our best guess of what our strategy would be to go from the left column to the right column?
Yeah. It doesn't have to, there's no like right answer either. It's just like it can be specific or kind of vague. Just what do you think gets us from like unity or from division to unity?
Got it.
So the idea is that the column of the dynamics of weakness that create weakness in community or organization, the dynamics of strength create strong communities and strong organizations. So the role of the organizer is to change those dynamics through their work. So the role of the organizer is to help, recognize division that exists and work to build unity.
Okay. Well, I heard, can y'all hear me, by the way?
Yes.
So I heard a good explanation from my breakout room from going from doubt to hope. I would like to explain that real quick. Basically, you want to start by, I guess, antagonizing the person you're talking to or the group you're talking to into realizing that the situation they're in could be better or that kind of thing. And then outlining examples of how we can go from that situation that we're in right now and bring it to a much more favorable situation, maybe using like examples or like stats or anything like that. maybe.
I think that's super valuable, Jacob. I think just to jump in just for a second, that I would just be careful about the antagonizing approach being the place to start, because that can go badly and that can
Oh, yeah.
you know what I mean? That can just agitate them at you rather than building a shared analysis of the situation. But the idea of having a plan to win that is based on shared values and based on shared goals is a really critical way of getting to hope.
Duly noted. Thank you.
We had, on a couple of these, we used as the strategy to move, especially like from confusion to understanding, or from fear to courage. We had felt that education or truth, honesty can help people move. But I'd like one of you facilitators to address the fact that nowadays in our culture here in the US, truth is not truth anymore. Truth is what you're willing to accept as a reality. And so now that we're having a lack of commonality in truth, that is taking some strategy away from being able to move people from weak confusion to understanding, let's say. Could you please address how we come to a common truth?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Sharon. I think it is the difference. A lot of times when I've done this exercise, people say education, and I think it's not wrong, but it's a kind of an incomplete answer, that it's not just about information. Like, we could look at the state of Washington and we could say that Washington state has, 647 corporate and luxury tax loopholes. And you could look at that set of information and you could say, wow, therefore from that information, I conclude that Washington is a really business-friendly state and all states should be like that. Or you could look at that set of information and you could interpret that information differently and say, wow, Washington's state budget looks like Swiss cheese even in a good year. And that seems like a problem for the needs of my community being met. So it's about interpreting, not just, a fact sheet. It's really like, what does this information mean? If the mayor is presenting a new contract with the police union, well, what's our assessment of that contract? Not just like, here's the 77 pages of that contract, but really, what is our analysis of that? What is our interpreter? How do we play the interpreter role? So the role of the organizer sometimes is to play the interpreter role, because people are speaking different languages metaphorically. And so saying like, here's what I feel, here's how we can understand, or how can we come together and build a shared understanding based on the analysis that we have in common.
But at the end of the day,
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Zara, is it okay if I just go first?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, Zara, what's your last name?
Stevens.
Are you with UCLA?
I am. Well,
Okay,
ACLU.
I've been
The
meaning to
UCLA.
I'm sorry. I've been meaning to reach out. I apologize. Anyway.
No worries.
Going back to what I was saying. So I think the important thing to realize here, Sharon, is that you're right. The truth will always be fluid. You know why? Because we are from different generations with different ages, where our lived experiences are different. So what's true for me may not necessarily be true for you, and vice versa. But the beginning and the end of it all, I think, starts like when you talk about division and you talk about unity, you can't get from division to unity without forming alliances. You can't get from division to unity without forming relationships. And you got to build on those relationships by having conversations and coming to common understanding. And that awareness will bring your confusion to an understanding. And that doubt, when you have all these lived experiences and you shared all these values and you come to a common understanding and you kind of made a unified front for things. And like Zara or Liz or I, if we're in a same space together, and or Sharon, even the four of us are in the same space together, and we know each other well enough, and there is a common goal and an objective that we want to arrive at, knowing each other and having those relationships, knowing that Nagmana is this, she doesn't like that, or whatever the case may be. Sorry, what was that? All right, so I got distracted by that screen moving. So that is so important, because that is the basis that you're going to build anything off of. And the truth can change, and it should change, because no two situations are the same, and the world doesn't stay the same. And what's true today is going to be different tomorrow. So why should it stay the same? We should just be up to believing it, and we should be up to being in a position where we can say, this is right and this is wrong, and moving with that. Do you agree?
I think I agree, and I appreciate your wisdoms. I guess I'm at the point in the national conversation where that is really difficult to achieve at this point.
Yeah.
Well, on
I
the
think
national
that
level, I understand what you're saying, but I think there is a way to move forward, realizing that I speak Urdu. I'm originally from Pakistan, so Urdu, in my language, there is an adage which says all 5 fingers on the hand are not equal, because each one is an individual. Each one has a different function. When they come together, the hand functions, right? So as a society, we have to understand and realize our differences, but we need to move forward together, and that's what's the challenge. That's what the challenge is.
I
So
totally agree with you.
I'm going to run through the kind of the classic answers that I was trained on to this briefly, and then hand it to Sarah for the next section. So just in thinking about moving from division to unity, the role of the organizer is often to tap into common values and identify common goals. The role of the organizer from confusion to understanding is that interpreter role that we just talked about. From doubt to hope, the key role of the organizer is to help develop a plan to win. And the plan to win needs to be credible, it needs to be clear, collective, and valuable in terms of making an impact. It doesn't always have to be about winnability necessarily, but it has to be about credibility. And then from fear to courage, if you think about in contrast to all the others, these are not opposites. Fear and courage coexist. That's what makes courage courage. Otherwise, it's not that courageous. So when we're feeling frozen by fear, tapping into the powerful fuel mix of love and outrage can move us to a place of courage and sustained determination. That love that we feel for ourselves or for each other, and that outrage when we see or experience injustice, really powerful fuel mix. And then from inaction to action, the role of the organizer is to, well, actually, let me back up and give a verb. So from fear to courage, the role of the organizer is to tap into love, tap into outrage. And then from inaction to action, the role of the organizer is to mobilize. And that's where you might send an email blast and say, everybody call city council, or let's all go to this place, or let's all drive our vehicles. That's like the visible visual part of organizing. But if all we're doing is mobilizing, that's not actually organizing. That's not building relationships. That's not building for the long term. That's not even necessarily making sure that there's a shared understanding of the plan to win. It's just, it can be a one-off. So anyway, those are the methodologies through which organizers help change dynamics from no power to dynamics of powerful, strong communities that can continue to work together for the long term. That's the Whirlwind Tour. And I should say this comes from Marshall Ganz, G-A-N-Z, and he is an amazing teacher of community organizing. So with that, I'll throw it back to Sarah.
Absolutely. And I think what we're going to do next, we're going to talk about these 6 approaches to change, but we're actually going to make it 4 approaches to change because y'all are just so insightful. We've already talked about 2 of them. So if you're all right with that, Sarah, we'll jump right in.
Yeah, so right now we want to give you some techniques to kind of handle the resistance to change. So change, even outside of the realm of organizing, is difficult and also beautiful. And you have to consider this when you're organizing and how to kind of say that we're not the only people that are going through change, and we understand that change is a hard thing. So number 1, we're going to start with education and communication. So to kind of lessen the severity of resistance, that's the purpose of what all these are for. Sorry, I'm seeing something in the chat. Yes, Adrian's hand has been up for a while. Do you have something, Adrian, before we kind of jump in?
I'm good. Everybody else covered it.
Okay, thank you for putting that in the chat. I appreciate that. Sometimes we don't see it with the screen sharing. Okay. Yeah, so the point of these is kind of just to lessen the severity of the resistance to change. And to do this, you can educate people or try your best, as Sharon brought up that problem before, and also just communicate to people that the change is coming before it starts. So this is going to help people to understand the logistical need for change, right? So the population wouldn't be what it is today if nothing ever changed. It's better to over communicate than under communicate. Because of this, you want to consider using like a range of techniques to do so, to let people know that you want to make change and that change is coming. So this could include like one-on-one meetings, Q&A sessions, town hall meetings, presentations, things like that, right? More than often personal things to let people, a lot of times the people in power, know that change is coming. So when do you want to use this? You want to use this when your community or your audience has a lack of information or inaccurate information, and it's just kind of learning about the basis of your issue on the change that you're trying to make. The organizer role in this step would be research and educating the public. So one of the values that we use at Pajals is operating from sound and current data when we organize. So this can mean communicating clearly from person to person when we're having like a misunderstanding and not acting from our assumptions. Or it could mean making sure that we have the right information about, let's say, the military budget before we determine how to act to shrink it. So this is because we want to have effective and also the easiest way to not lose ground when we're educating the public for organizing. So very few people have all the skills necessary to do this part effectively. So there's a lot of pieces that you can take on as a focus, whether that's academic, a field researcher, a writer, things like that. The list goes on, right? There's so many things that can be classified under education. Yeah, people who do the deep research also rarely have the ability to communicate it in a way that isn't over people's heads, too detailed, too wordy, things like that. There's like a second layer of people who interpret the information so that the average people can like understand it, and the people that haven't done all the research and done all the reading can understand what you're trying to say. This kind of also comes up in another workshop that we're going to do, and it's just roles within the strategy that we're working on. Liz started to talk about it earlier, but yeah, that'll come up a little bit deeper in another workshop. So another method of education that we think has a really strong intergenerational platform and the potential to engage people in a community, like individually, just like bring them together, is arts and culture. So arts and culture is a great way to get involved, first of all, and sometimes you can use it as a strategy along with your approach to change, or like an approach itself. So political art is a great example of this, and a lot of people really do underestimate the power of art. Things that you create really do have a long-lasting impacts on your audience, and the bottom line is that anybody can create art that means something to them and that gets their message across. And yeah, the importance of it is just oftentimes overlooked. So I really want to emphasize that that's important to realize. So next, we're going to have participation and involvement to, again, lessen the automatic response of resistance to change. You can involve people, the people in power who you think are likely to resist the change that you're introducing. So ask them to be involved in some aspect of how you're designing the change, right? So by helping the people in power to design the change that you want to make, they are going to feel way more brought into it, right? They're going to have ownership. You get their commitment and not just their compliance. So granted, this tactic is not going to work at every level, right? If you're trying to make national change within your national government, you're not always going to be able to get a meeting with somebody that's super high in power. But Things like local government are a great example for when this scenario will work. So when do you use this? So this you want to use when the change isn't fully understood by the people that you're trying to influence. And also, like when you want suggestions on how to design the change. With more input from more people, the quality of your plan is going to improve. Even if, like, let's say that the person in power is from the opposing side, they don't want the change that you are making, that is going to be pretty beneficial for somebody from the other side to have their input, whether it's going to go the opposite or something from that they actually say. So this doesn't mean that your campaign or your beliefs need to be changed, right? You don't have to listen to everything they say. It's just important to get a bird's eye view, right? Understand where other people are coming from. Also, yeah, that's kind of the end of that. The active strategy within this approach is most popularly recognized as witnessing. So this is something that's more of an activist role. It's more of like a symbolic protest or other actions that draw attention to the issue. Unless you're like moving people into taking action in a concrete way right then and there, it isn't really organizing, but it can serve as an important role in inspiring people to start a conversation that in theory could lead to action. One other area that I consider witnessing is just certain types of like editorial journalism and also like documentaries, whether that's like photos, videos, or a combination. This can also be like oral history projects, exposés, longer documentaries, things like that. So similarly, they almost always act as a tool to point out a problem or tell a story that's caused by a problem rather than get people directly involved. But the idea of it is that people are going to watch it. They're going to recognize that this problem is there, and theoretically that could lead to action or them getting involved. Moving on to facilitation and support. Another way to reduce resistance to change is just supporting people through the change. This could mean providing them with training and education, or it could just mean providing them with emotional support, right? So like change is hard, whether it's in an organizing standpoint or not. So you're going through a change in your life, that's going to be hard, even if it's, it's going to be a good change. Alrighty, and with that, we're going to be jumping to number 6 with plenty of time for power mapping. So this is implicit and explicit coercion. So again, the point of this is to resist or avoid the resistance that you're going to get from introducing the change. So here, you're essentially implicitly or explicitly demanding that a power holder change their agenda and align with the people that they serve, right? The majority, remember the triangle. So this can be seen as something like walkouts, boycotts, strikes, forms of direct action. So you use this method when the speed of change is important. So for example, a public emergency, when people aren't being served by the people that claim to support them, like politicians. This method is quick, but also risky, and it can overcome all types of resistance, but you also have to make sure that you're including the people that are impacted in those situations. If you're speaking over impacted voices, that's not going to get you anywhere. And in a lot of situations, that's going to make the problem worse. You've probably heard the phrase, nothing about us without us. Yeah, I think that's kind of self-explanatory. So basically, the real trick with all of these put together is that all these approaches to like kind of make people help people through change, I guess, is to understand that they're not mutually exclusive. You're not going through a campaign being like, how am I gonna make sure that people are understanding that change has to happen? They're interchangeable. You can use all the methods together. Just bring different individual things within the organizing. Yeah, so another factor that's going to influence the methods you choose is whether the change needs to be implemented quickly or slowly, and then also who you're trying to impact. So as I said before, you're not going to be able to always get a meeting with whoever you are whoever your change maker is, which you'll identify in the next activity with power mapping. But yeah, that's kind of the end of that.
Awesome. So we're going to jump over in just a minute. With any approach to change that you use, you do have to figure out who is in power, and that is the main event of this evening. This does not necessitate an issue specifically, but it will be helpful. We're going to take a quick break here in a minute. If you have a passion in mind, or potentially regarding a social issue or a project, maybe you have a specific passion for a greater systemic problem that you want to address, we're going to take a super quick break. And just as Ms. Sharon was asking and Ms. Nagmana had both kind of talked about, it doesn't matter if you want to address a national issue, something locally, something in Spokane or wherever you're based, in your school if you're a young person. So take a quick minute to think about that. We'll come back at 8 o'clock and jump into power mapping. Have a piece of paper and something to write with if you would like to participate. You just have to build enough grassroots power and pressure your target to do the right thing. So just like we talked about people power, I'm going to talk about connections and how to move from point A to point B, or rather build around to get to point B. So before you power map, first step, you have to know your campaign. So if we're talking about climate, for example, you want to begin by first understanding the national campaign goals surrounding climate, as well as the local campaign goal and objective. So understanding that as we talk about triangles, they build and build and build out, kind of having a little bit of understanding about where you sit as an organizer or as an affected party is really important. Number 2, determine your target. So before you're going to create a power map, you need to determine the key decision maker for your campaign or the person you want to influence most. This is going to be your target. And to do this, answer the question, which single individual literally can make the decision or enact the change we want to see? So I'm going to copy that into the chat just so you have it as reference. And the answer can be as high up as Congress or presidency, or as local as a school principal or somebody like Liz. If I say, Liz, I want a longer lunch, she's going to be my target and I have to build around her. So step 3, we're going to build one tonight that's kind of a shorter version. Step 3 is generally research that target. So you're going to find out the target's personal and professional connections. Maybe I will get in touch with Liz's kids, text them, be like, hey, I really love lunch. I'm sure you do too. If you have a few potential targets, you can research all of them to determine who holds the most decision-making power and who you are most likely to move or influence. And you know more than you think, I'm sure. Brainstorming with council members can unearth a lot of useful information, or maybe whoever you find trustworthy. Consider as you move towards this research, who helps to elect your target, or who hired them, who donated to your target's election campaign, or who is funding them or giving them salary. What are your target's previous and current professions, or what are their interests? What is their voting record? This can get political, and that's something that we navigate as organizers, regardless of if our topic specifically is political based. Which media outlets in your community can support your target, and which media outlets support you? And what are your target's personal connections? So I guess we'll just jump right in, as we're a little bit late on time here. Feel free, we will have this recorded if you'd like to come back to it and reference some more material as you talk about making larger power maps. I guess we'll jump. Building a power map, we're going to do it now. So step 1 is to brainstorm. Over the break, I hope you thought a little bit about your passions or issues or something of that nature. And so a community power map helps you determine that individual or groups in your community who are affected by the issues and who can influence your target. Some groups may be affected by the issue but don't have as much influence over the target, and others might have a ton of influence but aren't directly impacted. So it's all a balance. I hope you come back next month. We'll talk about that as well. And we're going to start kind of by thinking about all the individuals in your community who are influential and those who are directly impacted. So some examples, business owners, students, parents, teachers, organizations that represent voters, media outlets, celebrities, elected officials, XYZ. And as you brainstorm, consider thinking broadly of all the associations that have relationships with the target. You can be creative, try to be strategic, think about these major intricacies that may not be immediately apparent, and be thorough. It doesn't matter how messy it gets. The point is to get all your ideas out there. So step 2, you're going to draw a grid just like this on your paper if you can. I'm going to do it as well. We're going to start with a horizontal line with arrows on either end that represent the spectrum. So write social change with us and / with us on one end, the left, and opposition of social change / against us on the right. I'll take 1 second. And then you're going to draw a vertical line with decision maker / target on the top and no influence on the bottom. Now, I hope you have a target in mind. If not, feel free to use Liz as an example. I hope she wouldn't mind. Draw your target's name at the top. So depending on where the target lands in terms of being with us or against us, write his or her name somewhere along that top arrow. Likely in situations that are going to take longer, that are long social movements, they're going to be highly against you. And if you really aren't sure, you can put their name in the middle and call it good.
May I ask what we are trying, have we agreed on what we're trying to change?
You can choose whatever is impactful to you. So,
Okay.
Yep. I know personally, I did one of these last week as I was thinking about the mascot movement and the use of Native American mascots. And my target was my principal, and at the very other end was Native students. And so that was just a little example. We also have a case study we'll show you in a minute. Go back to your brainstorming list for step 3. We're going to search for influence. So for each, I know you probably didn't make a list, and that's okay. So just as you're kind of thinking about people who are involved in your issue or topic, and as we're catching up here, making sure you have your person at the top, you're going to think who or what everybody's relation is. So if there are any people surrounding it, ask yourself, how much influence does this person have, and are they with us or against us? So for example, I want a greater lunch. I'm going to ask Sarah. Sarah, do you agree? If so, Sarah's going to be on my side. However, she might have a little more influence over Liz than I do. Maybe Liz likes her more, for example. So based on this assessment, go ahead and place them on the grid. If you aren't sure about your assessment, or if members in your group disagree on how much influence a certain individual has or a group has, don't spend more than a few seconds deliberating. If you really can't agree, just write that individual group on the side of the grid, and you can complete some more research later. So I'll pop this in here. So this is a case study on MoveOn's healthcare campaign in North Dakota. I don't know anything about this. This is just the case study included, but we'll go for it anyway. So we're going to talk about with us, against us, not influential. It would be this College Eco Justice Club. I know that there are likely some students, there are likely some people that are with me, they're my age, they're similar demographics, but just like me, not as influential. So I'm going to put them up in that corner. And I guess I'll give you just a few minutes because we are not in a rush here. If you can think of anybody, feel free to jot them on. Try to get 3 or 4, maybe 1 in each quadrant if you can possibly, just to start making it look full. It's more fun when there's more writing on it.
Can I ask a quick question, Ivy?
Yeah.
Just want to check for understanding of this, that and maybe this is just completely obvious, but just in case that, so the folks who are at the top, right, like small business owners, are more with us, and have a higher level of influence on the target, right? So just so people are understanding what the, like what's actually being drawn out here. Blue Cross Blue Shield, highly influential, more opposed to the to what we're trying to get Senator Conrad to do. So this is, so then what, you know, I won't foreshadow what comes next. I was about to foreshadow, but I will not.
No worries. I see people writing a little bit. Just take one more moment, and you can see step 4 on the screen already. I'm sure you can figure out what we're going to do next. We're going to take a step back and review the network we've created. So take a look at your page, see how full it is. Maybe it's colorful, mine's colorful, maybe it's not. Some of these people and institutions connect not only to your target, but also to each other. So if you see some lines, start drawing lines and connect individuals and groups that have something in common. So when I talk about getting to my principal, I know that the student body president is buddy-buddy with my principal. So I'm going to draw a line there. And from there, I know that the student body president is friends with the chess club president. So I'm going to draw that line, and I know I'm in debate. So back and forth and back and forth. See if you can create these lines. It might not be direct. You might be going all over your paper, but that's kind of the point, to show even on a national level, we have these connections and intricacies that work together to get us to these people. And you know, even as you start networking, you hear people say, who are you 2 calls away from? Who are you 1 call away from? This is exactly like that concept. And I know we're rushing through this, not taking a ton of time. I hope you can apply it to a greater concept at some point in the future, and maybe you already have. So this is a great exercise in that. As you're drawing all these lines, you're going to start seeing things that are shorter. You're going to see those that are more direct from you in one corner to your power holder in the other, or maybe your power holder is directly above you. That is exactly what we want to see. So step 5, you're going to determine that priority relationship. Revisit that original list of community organizations and leaders, or maybe state level, national, of course, and draw circles around the individuals or groups you'll want to prioritize your outreach to. Of course, we're just doing a few, so this might not be as fleshed out, but typically in a bigger power map, when you're talking about real life application, you might want 5 to 10 top priorities. In some cases, like this case study here, if you want to talk to small business owners, that's going to take a lot of phone calling and a lot of driving around. If you want to talk to Blue Cross Blue Shield, that's going to take some phone calling. Maybe you want to do phone banking or something of that nature. Of course, Sarah and I also have a workshop on that, and we look forward to talking to you about it in the future, but these are just some examples. You probably won't have time to reach out to everybody on your list, and that is totally okay. These individuals and groups represent a range of these criteria on your power map. Hopefully they'll be influential and likely helpful in pressuring the target, especially the groups that are placed high up on the vertical axis, and with us and likely to support our campaign on the other end are placed on the left on the horizontal axis. So some of them are going to be easier to reach out to than others. For the individuals and groups that are with us, consider how you can build relationships through current connections and activities. And with that, congratulations, you've made a successful community power map. Pretty simple. It's kind of looming at first, but once you get it mapped out, I think a lot of times you'll find it can be overwhelming when you have a big goal in mind, or a project or an issue that you really want to tackle. And this is a great way to take the first steps to visualize that. And of course, with each of these symbolic lines and circles, there are lots of strategies within each. But I think that's also a great lesson. And we'll go back and also include that slide one more time if you are interested in looking back at it. So after you power map, there are some steps. You are done with your power map, but now you have to take action upon it. So step 1 being make that strategic and tactical plan. Determine the next steps based on the specific campaign you're working on, the issue you're working on. This could include building support from influential allies or neutralizing oppositional groups. Make sure you're looking at the building plan and that there is time for base building as you move forward through all of these different lines. And with the organizations you prioritized on your map should be the ones you're talking to first, or I suppose connecting with first. And step 2 would be evaluate and move forward. So you've implemented the first stage of your tactical plan. It's important to reflect on your power map to see if you've made use of the information you gained, or maybe you need to alter your plan. Maybe you add a few more lines, for example. And at this point, you'll also want to consider what new information you've learned that you can add. So reflect on how that should impact your ongoing tactical plan to build power and achieve your campaign goals. Awesome. Those are my last 2 steps after you build a power map. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to hop in. And with that, we'll give some closing remarks and open the space for dialogue. If anybody would like to share, I'm kind of interested what issues you chose. Mr. Greg, did you make a power map?
I did. I did it off of a problem I have right now, trying to get healthcare providers to get high school students in for practical hands-on internships and possibly even paid internships. And it's one of those things where there are a lot of mirrors that are reflecting things back and forth. And it's really hard to figure out what really are the barriers and what are just illusions that they're putting up to make it a barrier. So, and trying to find out who the actual decision maker is in a big thing like a hospital. Is it the human relations people, or is it the CEO, or is it, trying to pin that down has been quite a wonderful challenge. But
even talking about how there's administrative people on the other side, and that sparked some ideas in my head about how, I have friends who have done something similar, but what does it look like on a power map when you have somebody who's achieved that goal on a localized level? If you have a statewide problem, what does it look like when there's a city that's done something like that? Or if Sarah has a longer lunch and I don't, what did Sarah do differently, kind of thing?
Yeah, we found funny things like the hospital say, well, we can't do that because there's a law against that, or there's a WAC state thing that says you can't do that. And then so we said, oh, okay. And we went to talk to people that were already doing what we were talking about doing. And they said, oh no, there's something in the WAC code that says you can do that under these circumstances. So we had, instead of telling them, no, you don't know what you're talking about, we said, hey, do you know there's this great program over in Seattle that's doing the very thing you say you can't do? Maybe you should talk to them. So
that's awesome.
Getting them talking peer to peer and getting that happen, which really, really helped quite a bit.
Awesome. Does anybody else want to share?
I wasn't really able to create a power map because I think I need to do a little more research, but as of recently, I've been looking into increasing availability for public housing and making options for more communal and affordable living as well, especially within Spokane, since we have kind of a homeless problem a little bit. But yeah, I just started doing research on that kind of stuff, but I need to kind of figure out who I need to reach out to and like who can make those changes within Spokane specifically.
Absolutely. Liz, do any ideas pop into your head when you hear that?
Well, what it makes me think of is what lies in the hands of the mayor versus what lies in the hands of city council, like real specifically. And because the mayor is the executive branch, there's a whole lot in the mayor's hands with regard to what actually gets done with the budget that the city council passes. But interestingly, you know, the mayor doesn't have weekly public meetings with a location for people to go to testify. City council does. And so oftentimes it is absolutely critical to show up at city council and pressure them. But other times, because they're visible and they have a sign-up list where you can come and testify, they get energy aimed at them that actually belongs to the mayor. So your point about needing to do more research, I think, is really important, because otherwise you end up wasting time, and then it's not a good plan. Thinking about the doubt to hope piece of the plan to win, like if your plan is to yell at elected officials, make sure those elected officials actually have the power to say yes to what you want.
Right.
Otherwise,
yeah,
we're not using energy well, right? So particularly around homelessness, multiple administrations of mayors have hidden behind the fact that they're less visible in the community than city council is. And I'm not saying city council is perfect on this, but there are many situations where, like, the city council has designated a budget line for an Office of Civil Rights. No mayoral administration has ever actually filled that position.
Mhm.
So who do we need to hold accountable about that? So anyway, the question of, like, getting precise about who it is that can actually say yes, and how do we put pressure on them? And maybe then we go to city council to say, would you pass a resolution to help us put pressure on the mayor, for example? But understanding kind of where are the leverage points? Like, don't put the
Yeah.
lever under something that can't actually move.
Yeah, who has the real yes or no power with that kind of thing? Right.
Right.
That makes sense. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Awesome. I think with that, we just have thank yous and a reminder. Sarah will put the link in the chat again if you'd like to join us next month. New content, but we'll build on everything we've done today. Hopefully you can put some power mapping into action and maybe learn a little bit more, add more to your power map in the future. So thank you so much for joining us. You're welcome to stick around if you want to share or have questions, anything of that nature. We'll be